Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome, everyone, to the LURNIST Show, broadcasting live to you today from the Phoenix Business RadioX studios here in Tempe, Arizona. I'm your host, Deborah Hildebrand, and for the next hour or so, we will be talking about education, ed tech, and related topics with our special guest. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Learn Agile. We're an elite team of Agile coaches and instructors providing scaled Agile safe certification courses. So get certified as a safe Agilist, product owner, or Scrum Master and more. Find out more at learnagile.com. That's LURN agile.com. So I'm really excited today to welcome back Christian Nielson, Chief Product Officer for uQualio, an innovative video learning platform, and Erik Francis, an international speaker and author with over 20 years experience in education. So thank you so much, Christian and Erik, for coming back on the show.
Thanks, Deborah. Thank you for, asking us to come again.
Yeah, thanks for having us again.
It was so much fun. We had to do it again. So, Christian, why don't you tell us about yourself, your background, and uQualio?
I will do that. I'm an electrical engineer, and I was supposed not to do anything with software. I was going to build, power plants and stuff like that. But eventually I ended up in software. And then along the way, I started working with EdTech back in around 2000, just before the first .com crisis. And probably some of the first online learning in Denmark. And it was a challenge, But I think it's stuck, and I've been working with different types of training, planning, skills building, etc. And then about 3 years ago, I came across an old colleague who was starting up this video e-learning platform inspired by YouTube and playlists, and that's uQualio, and that's what we have today. So this is the short story, except that in addition, I'm Danish, not like the stuff you eat when you're a police officer in New York City, but from the country in Europe.
So just tell us a little bit about what uQualio is, because we talked about it on the last show, but we're not really going to explain what uQualio is during this show. So can you just give us a short introduction to what you do there at uQualio? What are you guys, what's your business there?
Yeah, the idea is basically like today, if you search for something, you Google it. If you want to know how to, you YouTube it. So our idea is to say that video is going to be one of the most used learning tools in the future, even more than now, because what we can do is we can structure it. So we can, all the stuff you can't do with YouTube about, did you watch it? Did you understand it? Can you ask some questions? Can you follow up, etc.? We have sort of added that to the video so that we, push something out on a mobile device. People can watch it, or they can use it as the learning bank or knowledge platform. But important, it's simple and it's easy to use, and you don't need a download to your app. This is, trying to make the barrier so low as possible to push out the information. And then we like the idea that the people in the front line, the guys who are facing the customers or the problems, they are very often the ones who can record a video with some stuff, and then slowly they can put it back through our system to the guys in the back office, and then maybe they can do the structured learning and the competence building and all that stuff later on. For the people in the front line with their mobile phone, with a smart device or whatever, record it, push it in as the initial learning input.
I love it. It's such a great idea. And we'll talk about what's been happening in the last few months. But okay, so Erik, why don't you tell us about yourself, your background, and your company?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back on again. I really enjoyed being here last time and really made some great connections between you and Christian. We've kind of been connecting through social media, which has been great. So a little bit about my background is I've been an educator for over 20 years. That's why I call myself as an educator, even though I started my own business. I've been a middle school and high school teacher. I've been a site administrator for a short amount of time, and then also worked in the state education seat out here in Arizona. And then 2012, I decided to take the leap and start my own business and go and provide first consultation, how you can set up programs that are funded with federal entitlement funds, mostly out here in Arizona. And also it's involved more to do professional development, which is kind of where my heart lies, is how can I work with teachers, work with schools, work with staff to provide professional development support, coaching, to make sure that we're engaging our students when it comes to not only rigor, but also relevance and establishing relationships. How can we not only require and challenge our students to demonstrate their learning in different and deeper ways, but also engage and encourage them to express and share their learning in their own unique way? So that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 8 years. It's been successful for 8 years. It's changed a lot considering what's going on out there at current events. And it's really forced me also to evolve as not only a business person, but also as an educator, because I really had to shift the way my approach was as we get into this whole new world, this whole new environment in which we're providing teaching and learning, not just only for our students, but also for our staff, our teachers out there.
That's great. So like I said, I'm super excited to have you both back on the show today. It was so much fun the last time. And so the last time, it was right before the COVID epidemic started, right? I mean, it was, I think, right in March when our last show was together. So I can't have the show without talking about it. So there's been a lot going on in the last few months since we last talked. So can you both share your experience with how COVID is disrupting education and learning? And I'll let Christian go first.
Thank you. Well, it has certainly done that because we have seen a tremendous interest in anything that had a slight smell of learning via some sort of virtual device. It doesn't matter if it was like Teams, it was Zoom, some of the existing LMS platforms, and people like screaming. Yeah, maybe screaming. Yeah, I think screaming is a good word. But
that's a good word, Christian. Screaming. Yeah, demanding. Screaming. Yeah,
because they're saying we need something. And at the end of the day, very fast we could see that the big players in the market, they managed to catch up. There were a few glitches here and there, but in total, after a couple of weeks, people were, getting used to it. Sort of I wouldn't call it the new normal yet, but we saw that people were, taking up, doing what they could, maybe missing the whiteboard, the real whiteboard, not the shared whiteboard, but the real whiteboard. And suddenly, at least from the people I know in primary school in Denmark, suddenly everybody were complaining about all the homework that they were just assigned. Because suddenly all the kids, all the stuff they did, maybe 50% or 60%, they did them in the classes or in the post-school work, what do you call that in English? I don't know, like work groups or study groups. Now they had to do it at home as like schedule work. So that was a big change in that part of it. And on the business side, at least seen from our own perspective, I think we talked on the 9th or the 10th of March, and Denmark closed down on the 11th or the 12th. Mm-hmm. And I think, if I recall the dates correctly, and I think the normal inflow of inbound customers on our side was doubled in the first week and doubled again in the next week. Simply, interest, free trials, meetings, and everything. The only thing is, I have to go back to one of the classics. When you have quality and quantity, you should always go for quality. Because we had so many people, and that was both from the corporate side, from the small consultancies, from the small and medium enterprises, as well from learning organizations and schools. They were like screaming, and I think that's why screaming was a good word, Erik. They were like screaming for solutions, but when you handed it out and they couldn't take a decision, or they found out, oh, we already have Zoom in place or something like this, and this is good enough for us now. So I think we had a lot of quantity and we got some good traction in terms of communication and interaction, but it didn't turn out to be quality leads in terms of at least getting people on board with the platform compared to what we did previously. So we have sort of the same numbers, but due to the high inflow, the conversion ratios are much lower. I don't know, Erik, but maybe you had the same, people were being tasked by their boss, go out and find something. And then they Googled e-learning, video, simple onboarding, cheap, and blah, blah, blah. And we came up and then they contacted us. At least that was the feeling we had once in a while. Yeah, so it has impacted us and also in the office, but we were virtual anyway. So we only meet in the office 2 or 3 times a week anyway. So it wasn't a big change for us in the daily life in the business.
You're not cheap, Christian. It's inexpensive.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, affordable. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Affordable.
We have, our marketing content writer. She always tells us the word we use is like price matching, affordable.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. She'll thank me later. How about you, Erik? What have you been experiencing the last few months? And what do you think about how it's disrupted education and learning?
Oh my gosh, the whole dynamic has shifted, and it's not just from what's going on with the pandemic. It's also what's been going on socially in our schools. When the schools all shut down, and you really got to give all teachers credit, because these teachers were asked to pivot with a moment's notice. I can tell you from my personal experience, my daughter came off spring break. She was in the Scottsdale School District, and then Monday, there's no school. And my other daughter is in the Paradise Valley School District. She was going into spring break along with my wife, who's also a teacher in that district, and they've just been informed, you're not going back. So all their stuff is in the classroom. And everything in a moment's notice, it's basically pulling the carpet out from underneath you and saying you're not going to be in your classroom. You don't have your classroom resources available to you, but here's this computer, and the kids are going to be logging in, and you're expected to do this. Don't grade the kids, which was fine, because everybody was so disrupted by then to even be worried about how we're going to be grading. We were like learning for completion. It just really, the teachers really need to be commended and still need to be commended, because they're being asked to do more and go deeper with little to less training out there. When it comes to what's been happening when it comes to the professional development side, the focus has been more so on product versus pedagogy and tech versus teaching. So the joke I like to say is that all the professional development has been focusing on how do I use a computer and what's this amazing thing called the internet. The other focus has been, and it's been very important, is about, because of what's been happening here, especially in the States, and happening around the world with the social movements that are happening out there. It's been a more of a focus about equity and more of a focus about social emotional learning. And to be really honest about it, I think that's probably where in this transition, it's funny, Christian, you call it a new normal. I call it a new normal because basically it's kind of like the reference for it, but it's kind of like the way of the world right now, that the training we've been having for social emotional learning, that's been the focus of education, really has paid off through this, because from a more generalized statement, the kids are all right, and the teachers have been working very, very hard to make sure they're all right. The teachers have been working very hard to make sure the students are being served, not only academically, but social emotionally, doing check-ins, not just making their lessons about learning how to do the math or how to develop and demonstrate literacy, but also tying that into real world scenario situations, doing check-ins. How are you? From my standpoint, it's kind of interesting because most of my professional development has been about instruction and teaching and how to do that rigorous engagement and learning. Right now, there's not a demand or need for that because, again, like I said, everybody's been focused on how do I use this computer? How do I use this platform? Throwing out words, Google Classroom, Canvas, Zoom, and what's this thing called the internet again? Or how can I make sure it's equity? From the social emotional standpoint, the kids are okay, and the teachers are making sure they're okay if they're not, and that should be commended. From the tech standpoint, I like to compare it to playing a guitar. Is that right now all the teachers are learning how to position their fingers on a neck and how to strum the strings to make a noise. They're not ready for me to come in to teach them how to play Hotel California or Stairway to Heaven yet, and that's very overwhelming. So as a business person, what I'm trying to focus on is saying, okay, I need to go and step back and kind of let them learn how to handle the instruments before I can come in and say, now that you know how to work the instruments, this is how you make music. And I have to be patient as a business person like that. And more what I'm doing right now is kind of using questioning again, which is kind of my forte, to say, have you considered this? Have you considered that? And more so focusing on how can you structure the time? Because that's been a real big issue. How can we deliver instruction through a video and seat time? And that's where the problem really lies. It's the demand of seat time that we have on these kids, not from teaching and learning, but more so, unfortunately, from politics and law, especially here in the States.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but I have 4 grandchildren, and it was tough. I mean, even me that's been in education, it was tough for me to help my daughter get them set up because we didn't know what to do, and then Oregon passed this law where right away where students couldn't sign up for any of the private online schools because they didn't want them signing up for those and then leaving the public schools. So it was tough. And Erik, I don't know if you can speak to this, but one of the problems we had is she didn't have enough laptops for all the kids.
Right.
So we ended up having to buy laptops for every single one of our grandkids because there was, they had to be able to do their homework and talk to their teachers. So have you seen anything that's helpful for that's come about?
We call that the digital divide and the digital gap. That, unfortunately, those who have and can afford to have and those who can't. I've seen a lot of schools have stepped up to provide the resources. A lot of schools I know are giving kids Chromebooks, giving kids devices. There have been organizations, there have been grants. The bigger problem is how do you get that? How do you create that platform? I've seen a lot of schools do ingenious things. I think Sunnyside Unified School District out here in Arizona, down in Tucson, they were taking their buses and parking them in the neighborhoods to provide Wi-Fi for those kids who don't have Wi-Fi. There still is a digital divide. There's also a digital disconnect because we call our children digital natives, and that's because they know of the devices and they know how to turn on the devices and they know how to use the devices, but they don't understand the depth and extent that they can understand and use it. For us, it's kind of like, we knew how to turn on a television and we knew how to change the channels. And when cable came out, we knew that we could go beyond the snow channels and go beyond channel 13 to other channels, but we never really learned how to use it as a tool. I mean, it's always been considered an appliance. And that's kind of what our kids are. They may know of the devices, but they don't know how to use them to their potential. The digital divide still exists out there, sadly. There are stories out here in Arizona, kids who are in the heat, they're sitting outside school in the heat just so they can get Wi-Fi on their computers. Devices, you're not getting the high-end stuff. You're kind of getting, the best for your bargain. The bigger problem, though, is the funding demands that's been on the schools because they're doing this out of their funding, and this is not something they budgeted for. So the funding isn't as flowing as easily as it should be here in the state. I mean, we have grants, but they're so focused on, and that's the problem with this whole thing. Everyone is so focused on compliance that they're not focusing on service, that they're so focused on making sure that your ducks are in a row, you're checking boxes, you're fulfilling hourly requirements just because in law, you got to do it to get the money. And that's what's making the digital divide and the digital experience ineffective. It's not the teachers, it's not the tools, it's the mandates and the compliance and what we're being required to do that's making it ineffective. And I'll go on record on that because the teachers are doing I'm not going to say the best that they can. They're doing what they do well, and they need to trust their talent as much as they trust the tech.
Yeah, I think that's
great.
That's really interesting because even though that we may be a little more ahead in terms of having people, the kids using hardware of different type at school, we have the same challenge in some areas also here now with the COVID and everything, because a teacher may have found a new app or something. It comes from a supplier that is recognized by the government or by the local purchasing, whatever, for public spending, blah, blah, blah. but because they have a yearly process, they cannot make changes to the packages until next year.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this teacher who say, this little mathematics app is great for 8th and 9th grade, but he cannot get it until 2021 because they have just renegotiated the deal. So instead of saying, okay, what's the extra cost? Is there something we can pull out or something like this? No, the guy sitting in the purchase department in the public sector, they're sort of managing, they're effectively gatekeepers of what could have been useful. And the only thing they look at is the total cost per user per year or something like that.
And it's about spectacle, and I think we're, depending on the tech to serve the kids versus our talent, versus our skill, versus our expertise. I mean, teachers know how to teach. And I like to compare it to this. This is my analogy what I say about it, is that Steven Spielberg's not a great director and Eddie Van Halen's not a guitar god because they have great cameras or he's just playing his guitar he designed. That you give them any camera or you give them any guitar and they're going to make art and music. And that's what the teachers need to, recognize and realize about this. It also, you have to break that traditional attitude that when you watch a video that you are not, it's print is essential. Can you understand print? No, it's now about, can you understand text? And text is not just print, it's video, it's audio. These kids are multisensory and we need to tap into that. We need to realize that. The television is not just the babysitter, just like the computer is not just the babysitter when these kids are remote learning. We need to use it. Even me personally, the other day I'm sitting with my daughter and she's doing scientific notation. She's now a 9th grader. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, I think I remember how to do this. And I remembered about it, like when you multiply it, that you have to add the exponents. And then when you add it, you have to change the exponents. But that also means you have to move it. Now, what I did was I went and looked up a video to confirm it. And I was like, I gave out this cheer going, yeah, I still remember it. I still got it. And she's telling me, Dad, you're acting like Mr. Incredible and Incredibles 2. What do you mean? There's only one way to do math. So basically, that's the thing, is that we need to use those resources and we need to understand what those resources are, and resources like yours where they can tap into it and watch the video, but also ask the questions. What did you see? What did they show you there? What don't you understand? And it's okay to rewind and replay.
Yeah, exactly. And repeat. And that's one of the things that I like about some of the technology and some of the features you have today in terms of learning. That is, even though that the book you have might teach you one way, I often see the teachers suggest, go to the internet, go to YouTube, go to somewhere else, see how you can get to the same result. Ask the question, is this the only way or is there another way? And sometimes by asking these questions, you're also training them to be a little more skeptical about the first information they get. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges of modern learning, especially for the younger generation. That is to say, is it a fact or is it just the first source that you saw?
Right. And that's the big thing right now, is that we need to think critically and creatively. We need to also stop with this isn't working. This isn't serving my child. This isn't serving, because when you speak in those, contractions, basically where you're using and just getting that mindset, yeah, it's not going to work. If you go up to hit a baseball and you say, I can't hit off Randy Johnson, well, then you're not going to hit off Randy Johnson because that's already in your mindset. So we got to think critically and creatively about it. Also, we need to stop with this. You have to be live and you have to be online when I'm teaching, because we're now teaching on their turf and we're going into their homes. We're broadcasting into their homes. Okay. Our classroom is not the four walls anymore. And that's actually great because we're not restricted by that. But at the same time, we need to demonstrate some sort of flexibility as well. There might be a great reason why they're not logged in. And it could be as simple as their Wi-Fi is down, or it can be as serious as someone in their house has COVID, okay, and they can't log in. That's why I'm trying to advise a lot of schools. I say with the students, you don't always have to teach it live. You either tune in or log in. And when you're tuning in, you will tune in live. And that's where you provide the direct instruction. And it should not be more than 20 to 60 minutes, depending upon the grade level. That's where you provide your direct instruction. You can then tier it out and do small groups based upon where they are in their learning. So we have this thing called response to intervention in education, where you tier your instruction based upon where the students are in their learning, and you can break it out that way. Or you can provide more strategic interventions, what we call a tier 3, by having the students arrange with the teacher, or the parents arrange with the teacher, this is when I need one-on-one. So no one is online for 8 hours a day. There's no way that's an effective way to learn. We don't put our kids in front of a TV, hopefully, 8 hours a day to learn. There's a reason why Sesame Street is 30 minutes to an hour, because that's how much kids can handle. And it's okay to provide what we call synchronous learning, which is if you and I are on this lesson right now and I was teaching you, it would be mostly direct instruction guided practice. I would have you put your responses in the chat box. I might call on you and say, hey, Christian, you said this. What does that mean? Can you elaborate on that? And then you vocally elaborate on it. It's recorded. And then you say, okay, can you put that in the chat box? Write it down so we have that on record. If the student can't log in or tune in, then they log in at another time, and you get record of that. You still have the attendance record. That's been the biggest problem with this whole thing, is that all of a sudden we're trying to transfer what happens in the brick and mortar classroom to an online platform. That's basically like saying, if you play football on the field, now you're going to have to go play Madden football the same way you play football on the field. So you're tackling the person that you have with the joysticks, okay? It's a virtual platform. We could use this to our advantage. Parents could use this to our advantage. Parents, it's okay to go and watch a video on it, or go and look at it, or Google it. Answers come free on the internet. You want the answers? It's all there on the internet. Let us teachers go and help the kids understand and think critically and creatively. How and why is that the answer? Or what else can they do with the answer? Or what if in this situation? That's where the teaching really needs to go with this.
I think that we could take advantage of it. Like you said, we can record lectures, and there's the technology does the attendance for you that says that they logged in and watched the video. I mean, you can set any LMS to do that for you. I love the part where we can do targeted groups of students based on where they're at. And that goes towards the targeted universalism theory, which is really becoming more and more popular, because it helps every student reach the same level, right? And they start at different levels, but we want them all to get to one level. And part of that is doing it in small groups. And I love that, because that just makes sure that our students are getting the attention they need, and it's relevant. So I love that. So go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, no, but it was along the same line, because there were like two things. So one was like to look at what Erik said previously. You have to go through the same stuff, but you don't have to do it at the same time. And that's one of the things that is a little hard sometimes for parents, and also for teachers and the guy sitting in the back checking every box and everything, is to say that, as long as you do the mileage, it doesn't really matter if you do it in the morning or in the afternoon, but, at 8 o'clock next morning, you have to be there more or less so you can continue. And this is one of the interesting things that we learned by mixing different channels. Like, you do this either synchronously or semi-synchronously. So you have some people logging into the training, people are asking questions, the teacher is answering back. Other people, they just look at it, they get a reminder, by the way, you're a little late, etc. And then by using also text messaging, I don't know if that's used in the school system in the US, but when we use text messaging, we can see that the general fact is like, I think it's 98% of people, they will look at a text message within 2 minutes after receiving it. And when you use that to nudge or to, remind people about something, then suddenly you have a different reaction, and you can sort of bring the class up to speed so they finish more or less at the same time by simply using different technologies and accepting that some people, they are synchronous, they're always online. And others, they say, I'm having dinner, and after dinner, I'll watch my favorite show on Netflix. And in the meantime, I will not do dual screening. I will turn off my phone and everything.
And what's really interesting is that we talk about this concept of what's called college and career readiness, which is actually half the pie. It's a theory by a gentleman named David Conley who talks about post-secondary readiness, that college and career readiness is actually half the pie. We also talk about work ready and job ready. And one of the aspects of work ready are behaviors of self-reliance and independence, because you're expected when you're in a job, you're expected to get a task and do it. Okay. You're expected to do it within the time frame that you do it. When you do it, that depends upon the deadline. That depends upon how far. So, you're teaching a lot of independence and self-reliance on that. The other thing is that if time is a factor, it's not so much how much time, but how well you're spending that time. Out here in Arizona, we have in state law that says students need to be in class learning for a specific amount of hours or a specific amount of days per year. That's not only tied to learning, that's tied to funding. So that's why attendance has been a very big thing. But if I'm basically doing this synchronously and asynchronously, I mean, the laws were set up not to support virtual or online learning or distance learning. Right.
Definitely not.
So it's kind of like we have like these archaic laws that are not up to date with society. What teachers also need to realize is that it doesn't have to be where you're basically producing a Transformer movie or you're using CGI to deliver your lessons. One of the things I discovered, and I never realized this, and I've been using PowerPoint for years, I can record my voice onto PowerPoint, kind of like, Christian, with your headphones there or a microphone. I can record my voice and play the PowerPoint where it records my voice and also the timing. And then I can export that slide or that presentation to a movie file. And then I can upload that to the internet, because when you do live teaching, and I even see this with my live PDs, it's very much like very stream of consciousness. It's very, very broken. It's up in segments. It's not fluid. But if I basically took my slides and I did a narration over it or a voiceover on it, and it's as simple as this. You just plug in a microphone, you turn on your PowerPoint, you go through the slide, you talk over your slide, and then you can export it. It says movie file or MP4. Yeah. And then you have it and you can just upload it. And teachers, we need to trust our talent and our creativity. I mean, this is something I discovered because I realized, again, you talked about how it affected my business, is that teachers right now, they are not receptive to professional development. They're overwhelmed. And they're on screen. So if I have to provide PD on screen, that's going to overwhelm them or bore them. And it's really funny how the behaviors happen when you teach on screen, because it's the same thing. Please turn on your screen so I can see you. Please turn off your microphone so I can't hear your dogs in the background. That's the way it's been. But what I did with it, I created this thing I called 60-second PDs. And if you go on YouTube and type in 60-second PD, you'll see it comes up from my company, Maverik Education. And all I did was I took my slides, I turned them into movie files, I put them in iMovie, I went into GarageBand and made a soundtrack and basically made this 60-second PD. And I did that as a service for teachers for twofold. One, they don't have the time to do it. And two, hopefully, and I've gotten some feedback on it and some interest in it, someone say, hey, I want to learn more, but it also allows them to go and rewind. I don't talk on it. There's like a music soundtrack for 60 seconds or 120 seconds. And they get the professional development. And then they say, I want to learn more. And that's how they're responding to it. And that's how they're learning. We can do that with the students, because what this now allows in this virtual platform is, instead of going, Mr. Francis, raising their hand, Mr. Francis, can you repeat what you said? I can go and rewind what I said and always have it. Recall is not so much, or recording your memory is not, recording what you're learning is not to memory anymore. It's there in the platform. And if you want to do it, and if schools are going to be like, well, teachers need to be online from this hour to this hour, fine. You provide your direct instruction, you provide your tiered instruction through guided practice and strategic interventions. But you're also then taking that time. I'm going to go produce this video with my slides. I'm going to put a voiceover on it, save it, export it to movie file, upload it to whatever your platform is. Boom, you're teaching. And a lot of teachers are working hard right now teaching. There's a lot of things going on right now where people are saying, teachers, get back to work. Ridiculous. They've always been at work. In fact, they're working more now than they have probably in their career, because one of the complaints is, well, teachers get their summers off. Not this year, because every teacher I can tell you that I know of, and I work with schools around the world, teachers around the world, they're spending their summer learning how to use the devices, learning how to set up their classrooms virtually, doing Google Classrooms. You look, there's a big trend now where teachers have Bitmoji classrooms with links on it. And teachers are working harder than they probably ever have been. And if people want to just focus on the ones who are not logging in or the ones who are not putting the effort in, then that's their responsibility to find out what's going on. And don't just presume that they're not doing their job. There may be a reason why they're not doing their job, because maybe they have COVID, or maybe someone in their house has COVID, or maybe something's going on in their life. Let's just not presume that it's not happening, because I'm going to tell you straight right now, it's happening out there. It may not be great, but it's happening.
Yeah, and well, I mean, what's going to be great is they're going to set all that up and then they can reuse it. So it's going to be great for them. And even if they go back into the classroom, they can use it. So, Christian, so how does learning on the front line, what you at uQualio help businesses do, reduce costs during the pandemic? So how does that happen?
I don't know if it reduced cost during the pandemic, but it definitely makes it possible to reduce cost moving forward. Okay. I'm sorry, I was just Googling YouTube to see all your videos, Erik, and they are straight out, and there's, targeted for what would go onto our platform. And I think we should put you on our platform so you can see how it works.
Oh, I'd be honored. Let's talk after
I was just thinking of Kristen when you were talking about that. So
and also going back to the initial stuff you had, Francis, is that the feature with PowerPoint to video is just so cool, and so few people know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody can make a PowerPoint with some animation, and they don't know that they can just record it as Erik told us. So this is also what we're telling when people say, I don't have any content. We just say, don't you have some onboarding slides or some process slides? Oh yeah, I do. Bingo, good to go. Chop it into 4 or 5 pieces so they're no longer than 4 minutes each. But going back to the cost part, I think what people have done, or what businesses have done in the past couple of months, is to say, we need to get whatever is the right stuff. And sometimes they found out the price was high or low, or etc. But in the longer run, what they find out is that by using a platform like ours or one of our competitors, they can actually reduce costs in general, because they take away some of the travel stuff. They make it simpler to run more onboarding seminars. We are just talking to one of our customers who does a cloud printing business, and they are about to. They have just onboarded HP as one of their customers. They are about to onboard Kyocera as one of their customers, and they came to us because they said, "Hey guys, in Europe we have 3 pre-sales people who have to travel and train people, and we don't have anything structured because 2 days in France, 3 days in Italy, then back to the office in Denmark, and they have 10 people flying in." So what they see is, by using the platform they acquired now here during the COVID, they will do substantial both cost savings, but at the same time also quality increases towards their customers or their users, because they can certify them more easily. They can reach out in a different way than they could previously, because nobody had access to who took this course. We come with a new version of this printer driver. How would that affect the usage and the installation? This stuff can now be sent out more or less directly to the single individual who had the old version of the certification or the training. So they see, maybe not right now, the savings, but they don't need to look more than 1 or 2 quarters ahead, save times of saved cost of 2 days travel plus hotel plus expenses and a couple of bar bills and whatever you run up when you're traveling. At the same time, and don't underestimate that, now people have gotten used to work from home close to their family. They don't have to take a day off when the plumber is coming around or anything. So this is the flexibility that people will start appreciating much more.
That's the key
word. So I think that the cost side is probably the same now, but in the longer run, we will see some significant cost savings on especially this type of training and introduction and onboarding of whoever is using your products.
That's the key word, what you just said, flexibility. That is the key word, and that's what we really need to do in this new times. We need to be flexible. We need to be honest. We need to basically realize that everybody has gaps, and no one knows. No one has the answers. And that's the thing. It's like, I've had people ask me, Eric, what do you think we should do? What's this going to look like? I go, I don't know, but that's great, because it's not about research-based anymore. It's all a big hypothesis. And we're all sitting there throwing stuff at the wall. If it sticks, it's paint. If it's not, it was something else that hit the fan. And basically, everything is a great hypothesis. So the other great thing about this is that one of the things that's been feared about technology is that technology, teaching and learning with technology, was going to take over the role of the teacher, that we're not going to need classroom teachers anymore. Well, we've kind of disproven that. I mean, but that's actually what the thing is, that basically there was an attitude and belief that, we're all going to learn by basically jacking ourselves in the matrix, having it uploaded, and then all of a sudden, I know Kung Fu. That's not the way it is anymore. If anything, the positives about this, it shows the value and importance and the humanistic side of teaching and learning. You can have as many tools as you want. You can have many resources you want, but who is running those tools? Who's managing those tools? And the fact, Christian, that you have resources out there and videos out there, and it's not watching passively, it's watching actively. It's pressing pause. It's asking questions. It's rewinding. Exactly. It's fast forwarding. That's the way it should be. And that's something that we need to say. It's okay to do that. It's not that you just one and done. That's in the brick and mortar. That's in the physical setting. In the virtual setting, you can rewind. You can fast forward. You can pause. You can discuss. And it's okay, because you're in this environment where you can interrupt. I mean, you're in a classroom. If you're teaching and all of a sudden a hand shoots up, you're interrupted. But now what you can do is you can teach, and then you can basically say, okay, let's pause this. Let's rewind this. Let's go back to it. It actually makes the process simpler.
Yeah, and one thing that was, I think Deborah said it a little earlier, suddenly you have the ability to put people together who are at the same level. Mm-hmm. That's one very important thing, that you can communicate, you can team them up in a group. And what is even better, at least from some of the social effects you typically have in a classroom, is that people who would normally never want to sit next to someone else or work together with someone else, they happily do it in the virtual environment. They don't mind being teamed up with Ben or Diana or whatever. They are happy doing it online, because this is different. So you also change some of the social dimension of group work, because suddenly they are not teamed up by, who's sitting together and he's sitting next to her, etc. But you're actually giving the opportunity to, I wouldn't say hide behind the virtual environment, but you can very easily say, yeah, we sat down, we had 2 or 3 chats, then we reviewed a couple of documents, and now we produce this small video as the delivery along with these 2 or 3 PDF files or something like this. That is something that can be done now by breaking up some of the, I don't know the English word, I think maybe something like social structures in the classroom, which sometimes can be based on the digital divide, or maybe just call it the dollar divide, which is sometimes the case in what we also see here in classrooms in Denmark.
And it's called grouping. That's what it is. So, but also the choice to say, do you want to work with a partner? Do you want to work in a group? Do you want to work by yourself? That's the individualization of it. Personalizing it. Say, can you go out and find, how does this connect to your interests? How does this connect to the real world? A lot of things what I'm doing with math teachers is that I'm telling them that you should just be teaching the basics, or have them watch a video, report it back to you, restate it back to you, put it in their own words, and then have the kids maybe go and research or investigate how can they use this math in the real world, and then they bring it back. That's what makes this an active, engaging, and enjoyable learning experience. I mean, there's so many different things. That's how I even do my professional developments, is I'm always sitting there going, what's the connection to the real world? And I'll discover that I can use linear equations to create football plays. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And that's what we need to be doing with our kids. That's what we need to be doing with the teachers, and resources like yours, Christian, where you can say, hey, here's this thing. And it's not a complicated tool. That's the other problem, is that a lot of these teachers are so overwhelmed. and they're so bombarded. They got this and that, and this person's offering this, and this person's offering that, and we can do this, and we can do that for you, and we can do all these things. The teacher's just like, man, I just want to teach. So give them the hammer and give them the paintbrush and see what they can go and build or paint. Let them basically use their talent and their skills as a teacher to do the amazing things they do.
And this is actually what we will try in 2 weeks from now. We have an 8th grade coming down from one of the local schools, and what they're going to do is they're going to take PT, what do you call that, gymnastics, physical training.
Education.
Yeah, physical education, PE, and then combine it with mathematics. Mm-hmm. So what they're going to do is they're going to sort of create some programs, recording themselves on video, uploading it to our platform, and then see some of the numbers behind it, like, how many views did I get, what is the average time, all those things to see how you can creatively use your cell phone and the camera together with a simple platform like ours, and then create a physical training program that somebody should follow, and then analyze it from a mathematical viewpoint. So we're really looking forward to having these 28 kids running around here.
And that's awesome. And that's what this platform lends it to. And that's actually what I call when teaching and learning for depth of knowledge, or describe the 4 different and deeper ways to demonstrate and communicate your learning. So I would call that a DOK2, where the student now doesn't tell you this is the answer, or this is the outcome, or this is the action you take. They explain. How did they get that answer? Why did they get that answer? One of the things I recommend is almost like if you do a DIY video and you produce it on YouTube or an instructional TV show, you're like Bob Ross in The Joy of Painting. And if you ever watch Bob Ross, he just doesn't sit there and paint the painting. He tells you, I'm using this brush, I'm combining the paints like this. Or Rachel Ray, she's telling you how I'm cooking this meal. This is what I'm using. Here's my knowledge. And it can be as simple as kids using, your platform or using Nearpod or Flipgrid, and they record it and they send it back to the teacher. And now the teacher's not grading a bunch of different papers. The teacher is actually watching videos in recorded or real time, in which they can put comments in there, in which they can respond back. And the judgment can be, did you teach me how to do this? And it teaches students how to respect audiences. And that can also up it to a 4th level of DOK, because there's 4 levels. To a DOK4 could be, how could you turn this into your own instructional video? How can you turn this into a business for yourself? How can you start producing videos on PE, math, this English language arts book I'm reading in literature? How can I produce a video that would help kids understand in a way? Because kids speak their own language, and sometimes we educators, we speak so over their heads, that's why they get confused. But if kids can go and explain it to each other, that's half the battle.
Agreed. So I'm very excited to see how this will turn out. And clearly some of the ideas, the teachers, they are very positive and they're very engaged in getting this off the board and try it out. So I really look forward to see how they respond to something that is similar to YouTube, but adds these things that they can record the video, they can throw it out there, they can beta test it, they can improve it as they move along and say, hey, how come the people who followed my exercises, they complain about something in the lower back? And then the gym teacher, he checks the video and he says, you know what, that's because you forgot to mention that it's very important you do this and that with your feet before you start moving your back up and down. This is I think some of the funny things that not funny, interesting things that I look forward to seeing coming back to us, and of course also to the kids as part of their learning.
Well, let's be sure to connect, because there's some things that you can do that even to be not just something just they're producing, but also analyzing it, like maybe even comparing workout videos from 2 different people. Like maybe there's this one person who does this workout this way or explains how to kick a soccer ball this way, and this other person produced this video how to kick a soccer ball. Which one was the most effective and why? What's their shortcomings? What were they do effectively? Now, if you had to go and produce your own video on how to kick a soccer ball correctly so that you're not breaking your toe, you're actually using the inside of your foot, how is it basically you can produce that video? And that is just basically, if that's what you're doing with the students and what you're offering, that's what we need to be doing with our kids. And I will definitely make sure that, we here in the States know about what you're providing out there, because that's exactly what we need here in the States, ways that we can have the kids actively learn versus passively.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to see how they use is the ability to feedback directly a feed from the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So, I tried this and it didn't work. So now I'm asking my mom, could you please hold the camera and, videotape me while I'm doing this exercise? And then when they're done, they can, click send to the teacher. The teacher can see, oh, now I understand why you don't feel the effect or blah, blah, blah. So in this way, you are adding the ability to send back media and not just words.
Right.
Like a video is like 1.8 million words somebody wrote last week. I saw it in a post. So it's like much more effective. Why doesn't it work? Your chair is not high enough. You need to use a higher chair when you do this exercise.
And they're already doing this. They're all on this thing called TikTok. And they're all there, if you got, we've had some controversy here in the States about TikTok, but they are all there on TikTok, recording these videos, doing these silly dances, demonstrate, and dance moves that they're doing are amazing, and they look like professional dancers a lot of times on there, or they're producing these funny videos where they're doing voiceovers or they're lip syncing, and it's really creative. So, the trigger to say, have you ever done do you know what TikTok is? What if you turn, and that's actually a struggle that people are having, because a lot of teachers are like, I want to use TikTok to help teach my kids. And a lot of people say, don't go on there because there's some controversial stuff. But how can we turn these tools that we take for granted into a resource that we can use that can be effective to not only deepen learning and demonstrate learning, but actually turn into something that could be turned into a career? Because if I, like those 60-second PDs, that's something that just came up. If I could monetize that and turn it into a career, that's awesome. And now imagine you're this 12, 13, 10-year-old kid who realizes, wow, you know what? I could produce how-to videos on TikTok or how-to videos on YouTube, and I can monetize that.
And this is one of the things that we have some of our clients coming to talk about because they see that they have a following. They want to monetize what they're doing now for. Yeah, they may get paid for the face-to-face business, but they'd like to turn some of it into, subscription-based, maybe for existing clients, maybe for a small fee or something. But to say that I create something and it's mine, and even though that I may put some of it out on YouTube, I would really like to be able to control who has access to it. This is a little against the idea of YouTube, but it's certainly in the idea of saying, I do something that has value. And right now I have the intellectual property rights. I may put it out for free later on, but right now I would like to control it. And this is where teaching kids about the ability to use different platforms, and there are pluses and minuses, like YouTube is easy, TikTok is easy, but there are some things you cannot do if you do something that's special, or you end up being the best guy teaching how to do some certain dance moves.
But that's stimulating your thinking. That's like basically, wait a minute, I can do this as a professional. Kids don't even realize this. They can do this in ways that will not only deepen their learning, but also, academically and personally rewarding them. This is the whole thing we talk about career and technical education. What are we doing to have our students recognize and realize what they're learning in the classroom can be applied and used in the real world, not only effectively, but also innovative and inventively. And that's what we should be considering when it comes to how we're teaching, and let it come from the kids. I have a funny story. My wife last year was doing a comparison question, and they had to express their opinions. And she asked the first grader, would you rather be a whale or a giraffe? And the student responded, I'd rather be a whale, because if I was a giraffe, I would be locked up in Carol Baskin's zoo from Tiger King. And that's a first grader who made that connection. That is such creative thinking. That's what creative thinking is. It's making those divergent, out-of-the-box connections. Our kids are so creative, and they're more creative than they realize. What are we doing so that our kids can basically demonstrate and communicate their learning, not just actively and deeply, but also creatively? And that's what this platform allows them to do.
That's like I had this conversation on the backseat of my car. My daughter, she's like 7. She said, I would actually love to live forever. And then my youngest, he said, no, I'd rather die. And I said, what he meant by that? Yeah, because if he lived forever, he would not go to heaven and meet his grandfather.
Oh, see? That's that
Yes, his
critical
grandfather,
creative
a
thinking.
great-grandfather, his great-grandfather died before he was born. So for him, that was the entry to meet his great-grandfather when he would eventually die. So he didn't want to live forever. And these are some of the connections, some of the answers they come up with if they are exposed to a broad range of stimulus, video, structured learning, anything, but they are being trained in different ways and not just one way. And this is what I like about what we see now, both in the corporate world, but especially in the learning world and in the training world. That is, you find out that, okay, just because I have a hammer, things are not nails. Mm-hmm. So you need to say, this is a hammer, this is a screwdriver. Find the right tool for the right problem. And if not, then go look for the tool if you have a problem that doesn't fit the tools you know already.
Or be creative with it and take the other end of the hammer if it's got the nail remover and try to fit it into the screw. See, but that's that kind of thing. And you know, it's also about, when you talk about, it's a flexibility and people have to say it's okay to do this. You know, one of the things I was recommending with when this whole thing went down and kids weren't being graded, but we had to engage them. One of the lessons I encouraged teachers to do was, I said, ask them if they've seen a movie that was originally from a book. And then if they saw the movie, let's say, for example, they saw one of the Harry Potter films, you have them go and read the book and then ask them, how did seeing the movie first influence the way you read the book? And that's thinking critically. And it's actually, I discovered there's actually a bigger debate out there when we talk about, is it better to read the book before you see the movie, or should you see the movie before you read the book? It's not as clear cut this and that as it used to be, because now there's actually a position to say out there, well, if you see the movie before you read the book, then you won't be disappointed by the movie, or that some people don't learn well by text and print, but still they can go and understand the story and use those critical thinking skills that way. And yeah, it's not as this or that. And that's what some of the discomfort of this platform is that people are not restricted by their 4 walls of their brick and mortar classroom. People are not restricted by the textbook that was adopted by the school or the district or the charter. People are not restricted to basically say, we're not even restricted by the assessments. They took away the assessments last year, which was the greatest thing they could have done. Because, you know, now that's actually going to be an interesting thing in the next few months, is that how we look at accountability with assessments. Allow the kids to go explore and let them bring it back and let them explain, not only deeply, but also in their own unique way.
Great. So I can't believe it. We're up. Our hour is up. You guys it was wonderful. What a great conversation and discussion about learning in the time of COVID. I love it. So I want to thank you both so much for joining us today. It was a really great show. And how can we get a hold of you guys? So Christian, how can we get a hold of you?
Well, I'm available on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, everything. Just search for uQualio and CPO, Chief Product Officer, and you'll find me there.
Yep. You are definitely on social media. We know that. How about you, Erik?
Well, you can visit me on my website at www.maverik, Maverik, it's very important, no C in Maverik, Maverik education.com. If you go on YouTube, you'll see my 60-second PDs. If you just Google 60-second PD in YouTube, you'll see that. And if you like to email me, my email is Erik, Erik, at Maverik, Maverik, education.com. I can come to your site if you like, or I can provide PD virtually. And that's kind of how my business has shifted, that most of my presentations are now through Zoom and or Google platform if you need it. And www.maverikeducation.com.
Yep, I'll put it on the show notes too, Erik, and awesome. It'll be all over in social media. I love it that what you do, and I hope a lot of teachers hear more about you so that they can get your help. It's amazing what you do. So, and Christian, I'm going to be looking at your uQualio for my business because I'm learning so much more about it, and it sounds like it's a good fit for me. So
I would be very excited to onboard you and also you, Erik.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So just a reminder to our listeners that although we're live, we do record and release these interviews as a podcast. So you can subscribe to the LURNIST Show on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, whatever you listen to. And you can find the links to the show at podcast.thelurnist.com. That's podcast.thelurnist.com. And that's it for now. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in a month at 11 a.m. Arizona time. Well, maybe 3 weeks because we're a week late this time. We had to delay it, but that's okay. And thanks again to our special guests today. I really enjoyed having you both on the show. It was fun.